like a common trend. Then how do I say your last name? I'll let you introduce
Sisouphanh.
yourself because I don't want to
Yeah, yeah.
butcher that one more time.
No, that's okay. So my name is Danai Sisouphanh. Like no one ever gets my last name right on the first go or like any go because it's not really like as like it's not it's not always pronounced the way it's spelt. Like some people will do the PH as an F, or some people just butcher it altogether. But anyways,
Or like the like phonetics don't match how it's spelled
exactly.
out. Yeah. Okay, that's tough. That's why I didn't
Yeah.
even try. I was like, I'll let you introduce
No.
this. Should we just start with the fact that you just ran a sub 3 hour marathon?
Yeah, sure,
I
man.
wanted
We
to
can
open
definitely
with
go
that.
into
That's
that.
such a flex. You're also not the average runner. Like you have to be in the 99th percentile for muscle mass in terms of people that can run a sub 3 hour marathon.
Yeah, I'd like to think that. I think that's like one of the themes too, where like I don't know, anyone who meets me in person, I think like looking on socials is one thing, looking on photos is like another thing. I don't know. Everyone who sees me in person is always like, dude, you're way bigger. Especially like my legs. My legs, I think just like genetically, like shout out to my parents for those Asian genetics, but my legs have
There
just
we
always
go.
been like huge, right? And that's even one thing, like even going through marathon prep and everything like that, like my legs just got bigger, which isn't supposed to happen when you do a shit ton of running volume, but it just did. So,
Yeah, it's like the mailman analogy. You ever heard that?
no. Oh, I
Or
think
like the
so.
anecdote.
Like,
There's like an anecdote that the mailman always has big calves because they walk so much. And
yes.
it's like
Yeah,
walking
yeah,
is
yeah.
objectively probably a bad exercise for calf hypertrophy, but like if you put the right environment with the right genetics, you're probably going to see that express well.
Yeah, exactly.
Is what was your how difficult of a feat was that for you? Like how many marathons have you ran before, and like what were your previous times?
Yeah, so for me to get sub three, that was I think technically, and I don't know, give or take, maybe 7 or 8 marathons prior I've done.
Okay, shit.
But the my best time before that was 3 hours and 18 minutes. So I took off basically 20 minutes off of my PB to be able to sub three. But for me to go through that and go through that prep, I think if the hardest part was the prep. The race in of itself wasn't so bad. I think I definitely could have pushed a little bit harder in the race for sure. But the hardest part was the prep. And I think most athletes and just people in general can always attest to that. It's like the training's always going to be harder than the actual race and when you actually accomplish that goal. And for me, it was just like the training, like being able to find the time to put in the mileage and just also like being super dialed on like my nutrition and recovery and everything like that. That to me was the hardest part versus the actual race itself.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Have you follow Alec Bledis?
No, I don't. Who is that?
No, he's like similar to you. He's like jacked and runs.
Yeah.
He,
Okay.
he went on RX Radio like maybe a month ago. That's how I kind of found him. But he's like up and coming, I think, in like the more hybrid influencer sphere of the internet. Anyways, his goal right now is to run a sub 2.5 hour, and he's like pretty jacked. So that's interesting to look at. So it's interesting to see how many people are like now going for this like true hybrid training. Like the average person saying they're doing hybrid training is just doing fucking high rocks, and like they're not very aesthetic and they're not very good at high rocks, and they're just kind of doing that. Maybe it's a hot take. I'm not doing high rocks, but I
That's okay.
I have like an interesting fascination with the whole marathon running. 'Cause I took a class in college. It was like an elective course that only had 20 spots, and like everyone tried to get into it, and somehow I was lucky enough to get into it. It was called physiology of the marathon. So my exercise physiology teacher, he taught that class, and he was like an avid marathon runner, and it was like his life's ambition to qualify for the Boston Marathon. So I'm not even sure what the qualifying time is. It was like 3.5 hours.
Yeah, it depends on your age group, basically. But like
He was like in
for
his 40s.
yeah. Oh yeah. So it's probably close, probably like now. Like it's getting faster because like running has just hit such a boom. But probably 40s age group is probably anywhere probably like 310, let's just say, whatever.
Okay. Yeah, so it's like crazy. And like so he was like a very
Yeah.
good runner, and like he was all in on it, and like still was having a hard time qualifying. So I'm not actually sure if he ever qualified or not. But my one takeaway from that class from a running perspective was our final like paper we had to do for the class, like, the biggest grade of the course was write a paper on like shoed versus no shoe running. That was closer to the time where minimalist was big. Like Vivos just came out, but like what's the other one? The toe shoes, Vibrams.
Yeah, the
Yeah, not a
Vibram five
sponsor.
finger
Yeah,
twos.
not a
Yeah.
sponsor of the pod. If I'm ever sponsored by them, I'm sitting on a yacht somewhere, dude.
Yeah,
Anyways,
right.
that was like popular. So we had to go through all this. We read a bunch of books on it and had to go through research and like choose a side. And I just chose not to choose a side because like the research was pretty indicative of like, well, like they both kind of change your gait mechanics. And then the change in gait mechanics will kind of indicate, you know, different structure, different muscles that you're loading. And like both subsets kind of get hurt the same way. So I'd imagine like shoe wear maybe is not as big of a conversation anymore. I haven't really seen much about that lately.
Yeah, like I think a lot of people are starting to get away from the like I don't know, even zero drop running shoes or like barefoot shoes. Like I think there's a time and a place, but also like humans were never meant to run on concrete or asphalt. So shoes with all these like huge stack heights, lots of cushion, everything like that, I think actually serve most people like more like a benefit than it does a detriment. I think when people are looking into running like barefoot or stuff like that, I think those can actually cause more issues than benefits. And especially too, like I think for most of the times, I think people just suck at applying foot pressure, right? And I think those are all things that we can kind of take away like into the gym and like things to work on in the gym. But for running purposes, yeah, I think running shoes are definitely the way to go. If anything, they're actually coming and trying to put more cushion and more foam into running shoes nowadays than to take it away.
That's what it seems like. I see a lot of like space shoes. Have you read the
Yeah,
book Born to Run?
I have read the book Born to Run.
Okay, I love that book, but it also is like just like propaganda. This white guy going down to like the Valley of Mexico to find these like indigenous people that run through the canyons on little like sandals they've made, and it's like, does that really mean also like fuck this guy? Didn't this guy like I haven't read the book in like over 10 years. Didn't this guy take them back with him to Colorado and they were just like murking people in the Leadville 100? He was like taking them through all these
Yeah,
ultra marathon races and they were beating the shit out of everybody.
something like that. Yeah, but then at the same time too, like it's like you hear like you read these things in this book, but then I don't see like any high level like ultra marathoner that is from like this little village in Mexico or anything like that.
No,
If
dude,
anything,
they're
it's
all either
still like
like Kenyan or Ugandan.
exactly, right? Like for the marathoners and then even just like ultra marathoners are all just like white dudes, literally.
White guys with too much free time. Like,
Yeah.
dude, that is like one of the craziest displays of genetics, though, is watching like the endurance sports and like the Summer Olympics. I remember watching. I forget what it was. It wasn't the marathon. It was one of like what are the one of the longer track races they do.
Oh, like the
Some guy from
10,000,
Uganda.
5,000, something like
I think it was
that.
the
Yeah, probably the
10,000.
10.
The guy from Uganda wins like every time. You know what
Yeah,
I'm talking
yeah, yeah,
about?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
know. I
watched
think
him.
his
So
name.
shout out to this guy, whatever his name is. That's so disrespectful. This
Yeah.
guy's a fucking legend, apparently. Anyways, I was like, the announcers were talking about how good he was the whole time, and he's like in the middle of the pack the whole race. You have all these like white people, like Norwegian, English, whatever, towards the front of the pack, like the entire race. And there was like maybe 3 laps left, and this Ugandan dude just runs up to the front like it's like fucking nothing. Gets to the front of the pack, pulls back, waits to the last lap. The last lap, he just dusts everybody. He wins by like an entire straightaway. And I was like, holy shit, this guy just ran for like an hour and a half, and then out of nowhere just sprints the entire last lap. Like everyone's dying except for this dude.
Yeah. Like, yeah, the guy just knows how to. I mean, it's just probably just race strategy, right? You just hide in the pack, even though everyone's like expecting it, and just rip the last lap.
Yeah. Well, changing gears, like I've never really asked you, like, what's your coming of age story in terms of getting into running? I don't have many friends that are like avid runners, so I'm like, were you just like did cross country in high school and you were good at it naturally, like kind of classic?
Yeah, for me, like I like to think I got into the running. I like to think I got into running before like the big boom, which is like technically true, like before it really blew up on social media. But I grew up a competitive swimmer, like so I've always had like a
Okay.
background of endurance sports. So I was a competitive swimmer, but I never swam like distance. I was in like the sprint events, so like all the shorter events. Like I swam through university, and then unless you're trying to go for like the Olympic team, there really isn't like a pathway words for like swimming, especially if you're not swimming at like a really high level. And I just like didn't want to stop being an athlete ultimately. And I just like, okay, what's the next thing that I can just go towards? And it was running. And I'm right at that point, like I wasn't a big runner back then. Like me and my family, we would do a 10K like every year. There's like a really popular 10K here in Toronto that we would do for like the past couple of years. And I was like, you know what? Like, F it. I'm gonna sign up for a marathon, and I did it. I was very undertrained for it. It was like probably one of the worst experiences of my life. But I finished that race being like, okay, I want to be better at this, but I never wanted to hurt like that ever again. So, and then that's basically just how it started.
Dude, one of my clients just did that. He fights professional MMA. Like he just fought on the Dana White Cleaner series this past season.
Wow,
He
nice.
literally he had a friend that was like, "Hey, do you want to come pace me for half my marathon this weekend?" And I think he ran the whole marathon. It took him like 5 hours. Took forever. He was like, "It was the worst thing I've ever
Yeah.
done. Like I'm so sore."
Yeah.
He's like bored. He's like, "Yeah, I'll do the marathon, whatever."
Essentially.
So I guess this is an also an interesting segue into like hybrid training in general. Like you were saying, like running's kind of big online now. Like hybrid training's getting big. I think even before High Rocks, it was like getting more cool. Like, honestly, CrossFit was probably the start of more like hybrid based training, which is kind of like being good at. I guess the definition would be training two things concurrently that are gonna maybe have some sort of offset and stimulus. Like if you were to look at running and strength training, for example, like you could make an argument for like physiological differences and what we're trying to get out of training. But also like how much of that do you think just boils down to like not eating enough or not like phasing your training appropriately?
I think it boils down like I think way more than people can maybe realize or even know. Like I think just like phasing your training and like the nutrition side of things is crazy in terms of how much it makes a difference. Like, and that was one of the big things that I really struggled with for the past few years is really just trying to learn the balance of both. And it took me, I'm going to be completely honest, it took me a very long time to kind of figure things out as I go. And I think a lot of the times when a lot of people see these people on like social media, I think social media just blows a lot of things up like in general. Like people who think that running a sub 3 hour marathon is like normal or like should be like, I don't know, just like every day, just because so many people are doing it. It's like the same thing of like people who just are able to do these like crazy feats. Like strength wise while also doing endurance things. Like these people just either grew up or not grew up, but at least like had some kind of base in one way, shape or form. But basically kind of just going back to your thing. But yeah, like I think it's insane how much nutrition and phasing of training makes such a difference if you're trying to do both things.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good argument as well. Like I've worked with a couple of CrossFit athletes. One of them was pretty high level, and like they're naturally good at certain things. So like we're probably not going to put a ton of your resources into training more of those things as long as we're getting enough of a stimulus to maintain what you're already good at. And then like most resources are going to go into improving what you're not as good at. So I guess if we're just kind of trying to isolate or kind of being jacked and being good at running, it's like, well, if I'm skinny and a good runner, probably going to prioritize resources into being jacked and running enough to maintain. And then if I'm jacked and a good runner, I'm probably going to prioritize running and making sure I'm just eating enough to really maintain doing that with my lifting volume. And really, you can get away with doing like relatively low volume if your intensity is pretty high, I'd imagine, for most people.
Yeah, exactly too. And I think also that being said, it's like people who go in, I think it's a lot easier for people who get into hybrid space who come with a big strength or hypertrophy background in general, because you can keep such a good like amount of muscle mass while still going through it. I think it's harder to do it the other way around, right? If you come in with a big endurance base and trying to put on like a ton of tissue or just like strength in general, I think that's much harder to do if you do it the opposite way.
How much of that do you think is like physiological versus like mindset around training as well? Like I'd imagine most runners like don't enjoy lifting hard, and they're probably not as skilled at actually lifting.
Exactly. Yeah, I think there's a huge psychological component to it too, but also just like time, right? Like people who've been strength training and just like consistently for even like 5, 10 plus years who get into some kind of like cardio like later afterwards versus like someone who's been training more endurance for so long and then has to now like put on strength and tissue. It's like they're just so much further behind, right? Obviously they will make a ton of gains when they first start, but then it's like they'll have some kind of tapering off period where they're not going to be like throwing a plate on the bar each time like they like every like quarter or whatever it is.
Right. What are some of the bigger mistakes you see with people who are already, they have that kind of the strength hypertrophy background and they try to get into running right away? Like I've already flamed one of my clients on here and they already reached out to me about it because like they started prepping for a half marathon and didn't tell me. And then like they had knee pain that came out of like nowhere. And I'm like, it's rarely out of nowhere. Let's dig into this. And it's like, oh, you went from running none to running like 40 miles a week out of nowhere. Like no wonder your knees hurt. Like, so is it, you think it's more like a volume thing, like not running enough? Like what are the largest mistakes that you see? Because I know you work with a bunch of Gen Pop as well that are kind of like doing a little bit of everything. You were telling me like they like to do strength training. They like to do like running. They like to do recreational sports, whatever.
Yeah, same idea. Like I think that's probably the biggest thing. Whereas most people are just going to do way too much volume. And if people are just coming from like a strength background or just like strength training and they want to get into running, they don't start to adjust their strength training. They'll just try to put two programs together, whether it be like a couch to 5K and whatever strength program they're already doing, whether this person was telling you or not, right? They probably just like, all right, I'm going to start running and not change anything. And it's like, okay, this is where issues are going to come out because like you're not used to doing these things, right? It's like the slower approach is always going to be the smarter move, right? Where it's like to slowly build up volume or at least just like, start to modify some of our strength training a little bit, right? Like, and even just like starting to meet some nutritional and like recovery demands as well. Like some people will go through these things and not change what they're eating at all, right? And just try to eat the exact same way.
Yeah, what's your biggest gripe with like performance nutrition for running? I know there's like we were talking about supplements earlier, like element packs and like gel packs and this that, and the other. I think one of my favorite scenes from you ever watch The Office?
Yeah.
Like Michael Scott like carves up for his 5K race and like he eats a ton of pasta. He like cramps up like after running for 10 seconds.
Yeah, I think most nutritional things come down to I think carbs. Carbs are just king, and I think even like runners and like endurance people in general maybe don't value carbs enough. Or like a lot of people still just like under eat carbs insanely. I think that's one of the big things. I probably the biggest things. It's really just like most people's carb intake. But I think when a lot of people try to increase their carb intake, in turn they'll also increase their fat intake as well, which is also like no bueno. And most people just kind of end up just like gaining way too much weight.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is there like a flip side where people eat too much, like they try to overly fuel, or is it more so just like macronutrient breakdown, like
I
they
think it's more
say?
macronutrient breakdown, but also too like I don't know. Maybe I'm just like speaking about this from like a personal perspective, where I was just like I think personally I have a bigger appetite than like my output. Like I can eat an insane amount of food. And that's like one of the big reasons also why like I also like to run so much is that I can just like also like have an off-plan meal and just like not care about it. But like left to my own, if I was not tracking what I ate or anything like that, like I would gain an insane amount of weight super, super quickly. Just because I'm kind of a piece of shit like that, where I'll just like, I could eat my entire fridge, right? But that being said too, like I think a lot of runners kind of the same deal where they're just like, oh, I just want to eat like I just need to fuel and they're just not going to really think about it much and they're just going to fuel with like whatever. So I think in that case, it's really like, yeah, just more so like macronutrient breakdown.
Yeah, at what point do you think runners actually need to go like so when I go like in the bike store, for example, for my bike to get fixed, my fucking pedal fell off the other day, and you walk in, the first thing you see is like they have an entire wall of like just gel packs and like electrolyte supplements. I'm like, for the average person, do we even need that?
No, I would say electrolyte supplements, no, unless you are in like really hot conditions all the time and you have like a lot of trouble salting your food in general. But I think most of the times, most people eat so much processed food anyways that I don't
Exactly,
think
dude.
electrolytes are really even needed. In terms of gels, like if you're running realistically, if you're running more than an hour, I think they can come in handy. I've done a lot of research too in terms of just like high carb fueling in general. And this is like more so for people who are getting to like the marathon distance and above, where these things really, really matter. Not to say that you shouldn't fuel during like a half marathon or anything lower. But I think that's where more emphasis should be placed when it comes to like in gel or like gel nutrition in general. Is like if you were training for like the marathon plus half marathons, yes, you still have to take on a few gels, but not nearly as important as the marathon distance.
Do you play around with like carbohydrate type, like mixing like glucose sources with fructose, for example? And that's like something Phil's big on. If I'm speaking correctly, I'm not a nutritional expert by any means, but like I know Phil's big
Yeah.
on Phil Smith. If nobody knows what I'm talking about. Like different receptors in your gut in terms of like how you can break down and utilize carbs. So you could utilize more carbs in an hour, for example, if you split those up. Do you get into that level of yeah?
Yeah, I get into that level personally, but like do I know the specific numbers? No. Like I'm also not like a big nutrition guy. Like I'm not like
It's like
a certified
eyeballing it.
nutritionist
Like
or
I'll have some
whatever.
honey with my
Yeah.
bagel or some jam with my
Yeah,
bagel. Yeah.
yeah, stuff like that. Like there is like a lot of good research in terms of just like gut transports, in terms of like what kind of like carbs and everything like that, and also just like how how easy it is on your stomach. Like if you're to have like all your carbohydrates while you're running from like fructose sources, like it's probably not going to end well. And the same thing too, if you have all of your carbohydrate sources from glucose, also not going to end well. Like you want to have a certain balance of both just to be able to maximize gut absorption of carbohydrates.
It's interesting just to think. I've never really thought about this, like the level of detail, how it changes at different levels. So like I'm thinking of for that class I was telling you, we read the Dean Karnas, is that his name? Ultra Marathon Man.
Yeah, I
You're
think
familiar
so.
with this book? And it's this guy that basically took up being an ultra marathoner. He did like all the crazy ones, like the level 100. He did the one that's in Death Valley. I forget what that one's called. Badwater? Yeah, does that sound right?
Yes, 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 yes.
You,
Bad
you
water.
can
Yeah,
run
yeah,
in
yeah.
like a fucking spacesuit because it's so hot that you'll literally melt if you're not wearing a spacesuit. Anyways, like he like
Yeah.
talks about in his book how like he'll literally order pizzas like while he's running and have them deliver it to him at a mile marker somewhere, like because like you just need the calories. So like at that point, it's like you're not looking at any sort of nutrition other than like I just need calories so I can run 100 miles.
Yeah, like if you ever look at videos of an ultra marathon or even just like people crewing an ultra marathon, these things are almost like an all you can eat buffet in a sense of like you just see like the types of things people are like putting down. And I at that point it's like, yeah, calories are king in general. Like if you're going for 100 miles, that's going to be like a 24-hour plus race, unless you're like a super ultra elite, where in that case it's like you just want anything and everything.
Yeah, I'm assuming at some point you just throw a diaper on. Like you have to accept it's
Yeah.
gonna go bad. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 1,000%.
So I got us off track here. I think I asked you originally a question about like running for beginners. What's so like I think of my clients who pick up running and they almost always just go straight into like high volume, high intensity. Do you have like any sort of like template or like basic recommendations you have for people that are like just trying to get into running for like the first time or start back?
I think like I always like to use the analogy of like building a house or building a pyramid, whatever it is. Like you always want to start with like a ton of base work. Like that's the ideal. This is like the ideal scenario, but I would say that no one starting out and running can ever run easy enough. Like that's probably the biggest problem. Whereas like anyone who goes out for a run is probably going to be running like 80 to 90% of their max heart rate already in the first like few minutes. Like I don't think anyone can ever keep like a 50 to 60% like zone one, zone two type work. But that would be my general recommendation is just try to go and run easy. But most of the time, most people cannot run easy. So in that case, like I always just try to say like a couple times a week and just keep the runs more on the minimal side, even 20 to 30 minutes to start off with at first. But usually as people kind of progress and get a little bit better, then they can, you know, as they get a lot fitter too, the heart rate's just going to come down automatically. So then they can actually start to be in those zones like zone one, zone two. But yeah, that's where I would usually start off with. But kind of like same time too, like I think if people start off with high intensity, also not a bad idea as well, just until they get into like just so that they get like a little bit more aerobically fit. I even had some people that start like not running first that want to get into running, and I'll try to actually just get them and like tax them on the bike a little bit more so they can kind of bring up like the top of their pyramid a little bit more before we actually kind of go and start into running.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think about it the same way for I don't run. I'm not a runner. That's why I have you here. This is like I can never talk about running on my podcast without having someone like you here. But like I like doing Muay Thai, and my coach moved to London for a bit. I think he's coming back now, so I'm gonna get back into training. So I've just been doing a shit ton of assault bike work, like doing a ton of cardio. So like I'm not entirely wrecked because like whenever I train Muay Thai, I just redline like right away. Like I'm 10 minutes in, I'm redlined, and like it stays like that for 50 more minutes. Like no matter what I do, so I'm okay. Like this time, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna build a base, you know. And a lot of that too is like I think mental, like being stressed or like learning a new skill. Like you're thinking about what you're doing so much. I think running's not like as like psychologically challenging maybe in that way, but like it also like I think a lot of people that are doing running and running hard are also like fuck this sucks while they're running.
Yeah, and I think it's like you said, right? It's like a skill. Even though running is a natural movement that, you know, you grew up running around the playground as a kid or whatever. Like a lot of people think it's inherently like a natural thing that most people should be like kind of okay with. But even people starting out, it's the same thing. It's still about building that skill, building that awareness just around like effort and everything like that. I would also say, like you said too, right, where like you go into Muay Thai and you feel like you're redlining in the first 10 minutes. I'm sure a lot of that also has to do with like even like your skill of pacing, where you're like, you know, just trying to focus on like too many variables and like you're trying to hit the right combos and whatever it is. And then you're like, fuck, 10 minutes, like you're gassed because like your brain's also like just like mentally stimulated to the max and all these other things.
No, it's absolutely the same in that way. Like you just have no ability to pace, which is exactly what you're saying about running. Like you just need to be able to pace yourself and actually build a base up. And then like as you build a base, like one, you're building an aerobic base, but two, you're probably going to build better skill because I'm sure one of the first things that goes out the window with running is your form. Like whatever that's worth, really it'd be like your stride or your foot contacts. I don't know if you do you like generally teach like a 4 foot contact? Are there like really good runners that do heel strikes? I don't know if there's like any different heuristics for running or like subsets you put people into.
Yeah, I think general recommendations is not really where you land on your foot per se, but it's where you land in regards to like your body. Like you want to be landing underneath your body. That's probably the most general recommendation. I think heel striking gets a bad rep because it promotes overstriding, where you have your heel land out in front of you. But that being said, too, if you look at professional runners across the board, no one runs the exact same way. Like there are even some marathoners and some pro marathoners who overstride, where they have their heel actually land out in front of them. So I think it's one of those things where I don't get a ton into running technique unless there is a massive, massive issue where someone's like, I don't know, has some kind of reoccurring injury, flare up, wherever it is. But most of the time, most people will kind of find their normal or like their natural running stride, cadence, technique just after like repetition and just time of doing it.
So you're saying we don't need a running coach from a skill standpoint?
I don't think so. Like not unless there's an actual like huge problem. I would say that. Like I think maybe if you're just starting out, sure. But I'm sure there's definitely always going to be ways to improve economy, like running economy in general. But I don't think it necessarily has to be like a whole huge like breakdown of like we need to break down every small little thing. I think it can be accomplished from just adding in small little cues here and there, or certain drills, things like that.
Going back to I think I mentioned the Couch to 5K program. How bad is the average, based off everything you just told me, how bad is the average Couch to 5K program? Like, I feel like if I was a physical therapist, I would want a partnership where, like, I partner with this program and anybody who does it, who gets hurt, can come see me.
Yeah, I think they're just too hard. I think most Couch to 5K programs are a little bit too, yeah, I wouldn't say, yeah, they're a little bit too hard, in my opinion. I think more people would be better at just taking a much more gradual approach with the Couch to 5K. This also being said, too, I've also talked about this with a lot of people as well, where they're like, like, I feel like I should go in progressions of going like 5K, 10K, half marathon, marathon. And I totally agree. Like, I think that's probably the smart way of doing it. But I think in running in general, it's just way more mental to an extent than it is physical. Like, I think most people who are in general, like, decently good shape can go out and just do a 5K, like, no problem. I wouldn't say no problem. Like, you'll probably like hurt, or, you know, it's probably going to be quite gassed, but I think it's just much more mental than it is physical.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, like, I think I could do that right now. I can tell you the last time I ran, like, in terms
You
of like
100%
endurance, but
could.
like, what's a 5K? Like 3 miles?
What is it? 3.2, I think. 3.2.
Yeah, so I could run slow as shit. It's like going for a jog for 30 minutes, right?
Exactly.
That can't be that bad. No, I'm gonna get
Yeah.
heckled. I'm gonna get comments like, "Go do it, pussy." Like, what was I gonna say? I want you to critique me then in terms of, I'll tell you like something I've tried with my runners. I listened to Shallow give a lecture about like acute to chronic work ratio, right? So like his thing is like, I think every 10 days you scale 7% of volume, and you shouldn't go over that from a scaling standpoint. So literally, like if I have clients that run a half marathon, I'll just, plug it in Gemini. Hey, scale this across this many weeks, bake in a couple weeks, and that way it's like it's progressing at that sustainable level, which ends up being obviously you have to set your base miles, but kind of just set base mileage based off the person's like lifestyle. Like, oh, I run 3 days a week. Cool. How long have you been running for? How much have you been running? What's your tolerance? Start there, and then build off of that. And then typically, hopefully, if your client wants to do a half marathon, they aren't telling you 4 weeks out, because then it's like, okay, well, if you have enough time, like it's pretty easy just to do that. What are your thoughts on that kind of approach?
Yeah, I like that approach. I think 7 might be a little conservative. You could probably go up to 10%. Like
Okay.
I think that's also a generalized rule in like the running community as well. But I think it's very dependent on the person. I think one of the biggest guidelines I would give most people is you don't like we looking at a weekly volume is definitely important, but what you want to look at the most when it comes to running whatever 10K, half, full marathon is really being mindful of increasing the long run. Like I'm assuming everyone's going to have some type of long run in their program. If they're running a half marathon or a marathon distance, that's probably where you want to be. That's probably where you want to scale up the slowest. Like you don't want to make any massive jumps in that, just because that has the highest risk of injury. It's not necessarily I don't want to say it's not like the wear and tear over the week, because that also does play a big role into it. But usually the long run is where most people are going to kind of incur some kind of injury or niggle or something like that.
Just because we're running more fatigued for a longer period. Kind of like we were saying earlier, like when you're tired, stuff goes wrong faster.
Exactly. Right. Whereas like if you're doing
That's
it
good to
over
know.
like a given week, right? Like you said, you have a client that runs 3 times a week, and you're kind of just building off the weekly volume like that. Like not a like that's definitely like a smart way to do it, and like probably the right way to do it. But I would just be mindful of just like not trying to jack up that long run too quickly.
Put that in perspective for me. I don't run. Like I don't know what a long
Yeah.
run is. Like for me, running to the end of the street's a long run. That's more than 40 yards.
Yeah. Okay. So let's take a marathon runner, for example, someone who's, doing, most runners will do like a weekly long run session, depending on whether you're running a half, full, 10K, whatever. They'll do some kind of run. Typically, most people do it on a weekend because that's when people have like the most time. Could be anywhere between, I'm talking kilometers here, but it'll be anywhere between like 14 to 36 kilometers if you're doing up to marathon distance, which would be, I don't know, what is that, 22 miles or something like that. So you just don't want to scale that one single run like way too quickly. You don't want to make massive jumps where you're going up like 4 miles or something like that. Like that's one where I would probably take the more gradual approach, where you would just maybe scale up every like maybe 2 miles or something like that. That's where I would probably look at. Like I wouldn't just try to make massive jumps over that like long run distance super quickly, week to week.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that makes it's funny how much of this is like pretty logical. I feel
Yeah.
like so much of it's like any sport, honestly. Like most strength and conditioning for most sports is kind of dog shit. At least like mainstream. Obviously, there's people that are very good at their jobs in their respective fields, but like the average person too, I guess, to transition into like the lifting side of things. Like how many people think they need to supplement their running with also like more aerobic based strength training? Like sets of 20 because it's more endurance. This will help me be a better runner.
I think
I
it's just
can't
way
do
too
sets
much
of 5. I might get
redundancy.
bulky.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I actually haven't had a lot of pushback with that, which is funny enough. Like I don't think like I've ever had a runner be like, I want to do like 3 sets of 20 of Bulgarian split squats. And I would be like, that just sounds terrible to me, in my opinion. But I don't like building any redundancy in the gym. Right? Like I like to use gym work for what it's for. Um, and it's exactly just like that. Like for any marathon runner, I do work with like some pure runners as well, right? And all the stuff that we do in the gym is like we're focusing on like shorter reps or like smaller like rep ranges, not super high, right? Not trying to build a ton of redundancy just because they're getting so much volume outside, where it's like stuff in the gym is where I want to reduce as much of that as possible, right? And just try to focus on like other qualities that they're probably not good at.
Right. How much like from an exercise selection standpoint, like what are the big focus points for your pure runners? So I feel like for the average
Pure
person, like
runners.
people that are the people that are doing like hybrid stuff, they're probably just doing like your basic like gen pop 4 day upper lower split or like 3 days of full body, and it's most of it's like static based, sprinkle in some stuff for function, cookie cutter whatever. But like for like the pure runners, are you a bit more intentional about what you're doing from like a joint perspective in terms of injury history, maybe even mechanics?
Yeah, always. So like, but I think a lot of the same staple exercises still apply even when it comes to runners. Like I'm always trying to do some kind of heavy hinge work, all right, whether it be an RDL or it even be like a 45-degree hip extension loaded. I always still like getting on one leg, whether it be a Bulgarian or a walking lunge. I will kind of cater that towards depending where they are in their seasons. Like I probably wouldn't go a walking lunge if they're in season. I would probably like to keep them on a little bit more stationary. So we'll go like Bulgarian split squat, whether we're going to load it contralaterally or bilaterally, just kind of depends. And I'm always going to do a ton of heavy calf work as well. If I have access to an adductor machine, I love the machine adductor for a lot of runners as well. But yeah, I really just keep it pretty basic when it comes to exercises. Always just trying to do that, trying to move through their core as much as I can, and just get as much like flexion and extension at the spine. All big things.
Sounds like most sports. Lots of direct core work, hip stuff. I think you can even argue from like maybe doing a lot of unilateral work in the gym is redundant in terms of running, but also with running, like you're not getting a whole lot of like synchronous deep heat, like hip flexion, knee flexion, dorsiflexion. Like none of those things should be happening in a very great range of motion when you're running. So it really would be redundant to double down on those things.
No, exactly. And I think also too, like, I mean, out of the space that I work out of in person, it's not a ton of like, there's not a ton of equipment, right? It's pretty bare bones in the sense of like, we have like dumbbells, squat racks, barbells. There is a leg press, but honestly, it's not the greatest leg press. I don't put a lot of my clients on it, right? So trying to do a lot of like bilateral work isn't the greatest. Like, I'm not going to put people under a barbell and do like back squat them, even front squat them, really. Because it just takes like a ton of skill, right? Just to kind of build. I don't want to waste their time. So I'd rather just keep them on one leg where they're already kind of good at those things. And it feels a little bit more natural. And it's like it too, like we're not working in a very, very high rep range. So I don't necessarily see that as like being like redundant or anything like that, but also just trying to use the tools that I have available to me.
And two, like population, like I'd imagine the average runner is not very skilled in the weight room. So the amount you can get
Exactly.
out of, like, I don't know, like landmine, stationary lunge, landmine, B stance, RDL, dumbbell stuff, dumbbell, even like goblet squats, for example. Like a lot of that stuff probably has a very long runway for progression. It's because they are so like novice to the weight room.
100%.
Dude, I haven't actually, I should have before this. I should have gone on Instagram and gone down like the running S&C rabbit hole and see what sort of like terrible stuff I could find that's like popular right now. What about for your own training? Because your own training, I think, is like a lot more advanced and than like the average person is trying to get into running. So like didn't you do like a photo shoot after your marathon prep or after you ran your marathon?
I did.
So like, okay, so concurrently trying to be jacked and lean while also running a marathon. How much give and take was there with that, balancing those two things? What would your average week of training look like between like, it was like 4 lifts, 5 runs, 3 runs, 5 lifts, like what, and how does that change from, I don't know, how long do you prep for a marathon for?
Okay, so I like to prep for marathon. I like 16 weeks. Like I think that's pretty standard for most runners in general. We'll do like a 16-week prep, but I'm not going into prep with like doing nothing. Obviously, like I have some kind of foundation. I'm always running. Like even if I'm not in a prep, I'm always running. But marathon prep, I'll always try to scale down my strength training because obviously the focus is gonna be on the marathon. So in that case, like when I was deep in my Chicago prep, I was only lifting 3 times a week if I was lucky. Sometimes it would be 2. Runs would be 6 times a week. I'd be running 6 times a week, so quite a bit. But then when I transitioned over to like photo shoot prep, my running came down. I wouldn't say it came down because I was still trying to keep up a certain amount of frequency. So I was still running like 5 times a week, but my strength training goes up to 4. So it just depends on like what kind of phase I am in the year, but it's either between 2 to 4 in terms of my strength training throughout the year at any given point.
Okay, so never more than 4. Going into a marathon, you probably whittle that down closer to 2. What's the most amount of runs you said you do in a week?
6 in marathon prep, 6 runs a week.
What does that look like in terms of mileage? You can use kilometers. Honestly, I think I checked the analytics. Half of the listeners are outside of the US anyway, so most people can figure it out.
Dope. Oh, I wouldn't say I have an average weekly mileage. My Chicago prep was probably the one that I can refer to the most because it was the best prep I've ever had, clearly. So I was able to hit my goal. But that one, it would just basically be like, I would just increase mileage on a weekly basis with a couple like down weeks or every like 3 to 4 weeks, give or take, depending how I kind of felt. Sometimes I would send that and go a little bit longer. But my highest mileage week was 120 kilometers of running and 3 lifts. I got 3 lifts in that week still. So that was my biggest week of training.
120 kilometers.
120 kilometers.
Do the conversion right now. 75
Yeah,
miles.
yeah,
Jesus
yeah.
Christ, dude.
75 miles. Yeah.
Lord, that's a lot. How would you go about? So I guess for you, it took you 7 attempts to get sub 3. Put that over here. Also, for the average person that's like trying to like get their 5K time down, like how would you go about assessing plateaus? Is a lot of it just like cleaning up lifestyle stuff, like nutrition, sleep? Is it like making sure the weight room we're not doing like 5 days of 5 by 20 of 10 exercises? How much of it is like buying into what you were saying earlier, which is like, like actually chilling out with your running and taking some time to get better at running economy and building a better base? Like what are the common things you look for in a plateau for like the more novice person who's, I guess, going more intermediate, as opposed to someone like you who's like quite literally trying to do a feat, which I would imagine is in the 0.1% of marathon runners?
So when you're looking at someone who's a little bit more novice, I always just look at their training volume in general, because I think regardless of where you are kind of at, whether you're novice, intermediate, even advanced, the more running that you can do and handle, the better you're going to be ultimately, right? Like just like it is in like strength training, like endurance sports even more so, where it's like the longer you're able to be in the sport and the longer you can do this thing consistently, the better off you're going to be ultimately, right? And that was one of the big things for me, even like going through my last marathon prep, was I was just able to handle a shit ton more volume than I ever could. And I think that's what paid the most dividends for me. And that's also something that I've been taking with a lot of my clients as well, that I program running for, is just trying to take a more volume approach, right? Not necessarily needing to crank out a ton of efforts or anything like that. It's just really just like being able to run more and being able to absorb all of that training. So I always try to look at that first. My other next thing would look at is just like nutrition in general, like basic building block things, like are we getting enough protein? Are we spacing our protein out? Are we making sure we're not eating like just like 2 massive servings of protein in one day? And even just looking at carbohydrates as well, like are we completely underfueling our carbs? Are we not eating enough? Those are probably the first 2 things that I look at with anyone across the board, whether you're beginner, intermediate, or advanced. Is always going to be your training volume, and then just looking at your nutrition, eating.
Especially for running, it kind of goes both ways, right? You're literally building a base from a tissue capacity, whether it's muscle, tendons, ligaments. Like you're like literally building a better foundation for your body, but also like you're building that aerobic base as well. So those 2 things are going to go together, which will build you a better bank account to draw from for if you're going to make your training more specific to any certain goal.
Exactly. Yeah. And like for me, I like to take I'm pretty data driven in my own training, and just like in general. I know not every single client is going to be, and not every single athlete is going to be as data driven as I am, but I always try to get as much data as I can out of clients, right? Whether it be like tracking meals or just tracking like macros in general. Even tracking their body weight on a day to day. I know sometimes the scale gets demonized, but I think the scale can bring you like so much good feedback if you know like what you're looking for. And just too, like just being able to give clients and athletes that like kind of education piece in terms of like, okay, we're not using the scale to like necessarily dictate like trying to like lose weight or gain weight or anything like that. It's really just looking at like day-to-day trends in general. It's like, okay, shit, we just lost 3 pounds overnight. Like probably going to be like a dip in like hydration and glycogen storage, right? Like we're probably going to need to eat a shit ton more carbs this day if we want to have a good session the next day or day of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more data you can gather, just in general, if you're especially in the more specific your goals are, like obviously for aesthetics, like someone comes to you and they're like, I want to lose 12 pounds in 8 weeks. Okay, like you better track your food. Like we're probably not going to just fuck around and lose 12 pounds in 8 weeks. Like I want to run a half marathon. I've never started running before. Okay, like well, maybe you could get someone from not running to running a 5K with like very minimal effort. But like if you want to run a half marathon, it's a different story. Like probably need to track body weight, track mileage, get nutrition in check. So I'm sure a lot of that has to do with just the goals as well. But I'm the same way. I wouldn't say I'm like a super like analytical, like quantitative guy, but with certain things, like the more you have of that, definitely the better.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for me too, or like just in general, like I think everyone's always going to have their own approach to things, and there's always going to be people who get to certain goals like one way. And I think that's a lot of the conversations that I'll have to have with clients as well, where they're like looking at like professional marathon runners, and they're like, yeah, but these pro marathon runners don't do like heavy strength training. And I'm like, okay, are you them? No. So like, what are we even talking about here?
Yeah, I think the proof of concept, like, or like, what's the fallacy there? Like the appeal to authority in pro sports is so terrible. Like, oh, like LeBron James trains like this, so shouldn't I? It's like absolutely not. Like you should actually look and see what those people are doing. Like the people that are genetically gifted, look at what they're doing and do the opposite of that. Like find the person
Yes.
who is like kind of average genetics and they're over succeeding. Like that's the person you want to follow.
Exactly. Or
That's
even
such a
like
funny.
Usain Bolt saying like he has like chicken nuggets at the Olympics or whatever it is. I'm like, yeah, you're not Usain Bolt. I'm
Yeah, you're
sorry.
not.
Like,
Yeah, you're not Usain Bolt. Also, Usain Bolt's such an outlier too. Like most runners, if you like look at the starting line of the 100 meter, where was it in the summer? Paris
yeah, yeah,
last
yeah.
summer. Jesus Christ, was that 2 years ago? Has it been that fucking long? Oh my god, dude. Yeah, it's been a long couple of years. Anyways,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
I think the tallest guy might be like 6'1", 6'2". Like most of the runners are kind of like, or at least sprinters are like kind of like 5'10" to 6'2". Then Usain Bolt's like 6'5", 6'6". So even like you go online and you'll see people breaking down his sprint for him. Like Usain Bolt should run like this. And it's like, well, absolutely not. Like he is one of the greatest. If not, he's the GOAT of the 100 meter, right? It's like you're gonna say he should run differently. Or also like you can't you can't put him into this bucket of everybody else because he is so structurally different. He's 6'5" and he eats the Olympic Villa out of chicken nuggets whenever he's there. Like that's there's something to this that you can't extrapolate on everybody else, or you can't take what they're doing successfully and put it onto him. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
gonna go
exactly.
do
And
the
I,
Dean Carnaz pizza diet when I start doing ultra marathon
no.
running. Like probably not a good idea.
Yeah. Exactly. And I don't think many people should like I mean, yeah, like I think using and looking up to professional athletes as inspiration, yeah, but I don't think you shouldn't take every single thing that they do because what they do isn't always going to like apply and work for general population. That's why they are literally the outliers of their sport. I think I even heard like what DK I don't know if I actually believe this, but I think I've seen an interview of like DK Metcalf being like I eat one meal a day and I have like candy, 2 or 3 bags of candy. And I'm like I don't know if I actually believe that. But also too, like please do not try to replicate this.
Yeah, part of me doesn't believe it, but also like I kind of do believe it because I see what a lot of like pro athletes get away with.
Yeah.
You know, and like some of my guys will tell me like, yeah, like some guys just eat like fast food all year long. Like they can afford a private chef, but they just like roll up to the locker room at McDonald's. It's like, oh, that's like, and like, I think Chad Ochocinco is one that would do that. Like he said he'd eat McDonald's all the time. And he's like, I swear if I don't eat McDonald's, I can't play well. And it's like,
Yeah.
you probably play well regardless of what you ate. And like, that's not proof of concept. That's actually quite the opposite.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
I always say this about good athletes. Like good athletes, they get better or they're good in spite of what they do, not because of what they do, which is not all the way true. You got some dudes that are like genetic gods and they're absolute ballers and they grind their way doing the right stuff. But you'll see a
Yeah.
lot of like really good genetics that's like it doesn't matter what this person does, like they're gonna be good at what they do.
Yeah, exactly.
What else did I have here for you? Yeah, we covered so much already. This is sweet. In terms of like more specialty based stuff, like speed work, tempo runs, like how much of that is like kind of eye wash? How much of that stuff do you think is important for actually preparing for like a marathon, like a more important race or a bigger race, I guess you'd say?
I think super important. Like I think if your goals ultimately are time based, like you have to spend a good amount of time at whatever pace you need to hold. Like I think there's no ways, ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like you can do a shit ton of volume, but if you never really try to hold certain paces or like your goal paces in a race or not a race, sorry, in practice, like probably not going to be realistic that you're going to hold these things in the actual race. But when we kind of go off things of like, you know, like how much tempo runs should you do, how much like threshold runs, like I think it's really just, it's so person dependent in my opinion. But I think the more and more like you get into in season or you get like closer to the race, the more time you can spend at your race pace is just going to be way more beneficial to you than it would be a detriment.
Can you elaborate for non-runners the difference between a tempo run and a threshold run?
So they're actually very, very similar. And this is like the annoying part where I hate like, I don't know, kind of verbiage just gets like almost blended, where some people would be like, oh yeah, I'm like running at threshold, when in reality, I don't know, you could be running at tempo. And I think all coaches too will like use a lot of these like words very like interchangeably. Some people might quantify things as threshold, and another coach might quantify that as tempo. Threshold, from I think if you look at like a textbook definition of it, it's what the fastest pace you can hold for like an hour, something like that, right? Where it's like if you were to go all out for an hour, like how long, how fast could you go? Also, nobody does these kinds of tests as well, right? So it's just kind of giving names in terms of just like working zones that you want to be in. I've always kind of gone with tempo being closer to like what your half marathon pace would be, or anywhere between like 60 minutes to 90 minutes. That's what I would use more like tempo for. And then VO2 max could be anywhere between like your 3 kilometer and 5 kilometer range, for example. So that
Is
could
that
be
just going at it?
like, yeah, basically, right? It's like, I think the what is it? Like the definition of VO2 max is like how much like oxygen your lungs can like maximally hold, or like whatever it is. But yeah, in terms of like just like giving like certain prescriptions out, I usually just give out like 3 to 5K pace, which is roughly going to be like a VO2 max type pace.
Is there like a meathead way to calculate that? Have you ever had yours like actually tested?
I have had my VO2 max tested. I think it was like, I think it was maybe like 68 or 69.
Which is, that's
Whatever.
crazy. Did you see the was it like a Norwegian cross country skier? Maybe he was from the Netherlands. His VO2 max is like
Yeah.
98 or something crazy.
Yeah,
His,
yeah, it was
his
something
max heart rate
insane.
was like 230.
Yeah. I did see that. Yeah, I think he has like the world record for like max VO2, but this guy is also like, yeah, an insane specimen of human being.
So here you are running a sub 3 hour marathon, which is already like a specimen in my eyes. And you have this guy who is literally, what would that be? 30%. His VO2 max is 30% higher than yours.
Yeah, but the thing is like there's just like obviously there's so many levels to everything, right? Where it's like when I talk about even like my goals, it's like I think it's just like maybe it's just like me being like indoctrinated on social media of just like there's so many people that have done sub 3, or at least have posted that they've done sub 3, and like even just like the circles that I'm in, like the running communities that I'm in and everything like that, there's lots of people who have been like sub 3, right? Where it's like like not to say that I'm like not making my feet, like I'm like kind of like discouraging my feet or anything like that, but I was just like, this is like something like tons of people I feel like have done, right?
It's funny you say that, because the first thing that I thought when I saw your post was like, holy shit. And then I was like, the amount of people that are going to see this and not realize how big of a deal this is going to be like very high. Like they're not going to realize how crazy, because what's the pace for a 3 hour marathon? What's the mile average?
The mile average, I think it's I can't even, maybe 7. I can pull it up. It's probably like
got it right here.
7:30. You got it?
T2. So you're running a sub
6:52.
7 minute mile for 3 hours long. That's crazy.
Basically, yeah.
And what are the guys that are running like closer to 2 hours? Is it like 4 minutes something?
Oh, it's like 4:10, maybe something like ridiculous like that. No,
That's so
it's
absurd, dude.
yeah, it's like 4:40s basically is like a 2:02.
Didn't one of the guys finally break the 2 hour threshold?
Yeah, he did it in like a very controlled like environment. Like it was an actual race. Like it was like like Nike put it on. It was like a sub 2 where like all the rules went out the board basically. It was like a very like the course was closed. It was basically just him. He had like pacers coming in and out, like doing a lot of like drafting techniques and everything like that. But still like an amazing feat. Don't get me wrong.
I was gonna say, is that like frowned upon by runners, or is it like more broadly accepted as like, okay, like this is still pretty sick. The human body can do this. Also, do you think that somebody will eventually get it like on an actual race?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. There is one guy the guy who actually holds the world record, like passed away in a car crash like last year or something, like, or a few years ago.
Yeah,
But
I
he was
saw
like
that.
2 hours and I don't know, 40 seconds. It was like he was like, it was 2 hours something. And he was like projected to be the one to break it. probably within like his next race or next few races. He was probably like expected to do it. But he was young. He was like in his like mid to like late 20s. And for a lot of people, like marathon running is like an old person sport. Like the former or like probably the greatest world record, or not greatest world, greatest marathoner in the world, like Eliud Kipchoge. He's like in his like late 30s, probably early 40s now. He's retired, but he was still crushing times like into his late 30s. So people who are starting off young just have so much more time to still get better.
Do you think that's what it is? It's just starting and doing it for longer?
Yeah, and I think this is also one thing that that is becoming a lot more like prevalent in endurance sports in general, in the marathon and the ultra marathon, is a lot of people are getting to it at a younger age. It used to be like pretty much like the old person sport where most people would try to do what they can on the track, right? Whether it be 1500. 5K, 10K, and then progress to the road like towards the end of their careers. And it's the same thing with triathlon as well. People that do Ironmans will start off in the Olympic distance triathlons, try to go through the Olympic route as long as they can. And then when they get to like the later stages and they're like mid to late 30s or like early 30s, they'll transition into the longer sports. But now you have people like 18 years old that are like trying to do like ultra marathons or even just trying to go straight into the marathon distance. So I think now like we're seeing this like resurgence in endurance sports where people are just getting into it so much younger than they were before. And the people that are like specializing at these sports at a younger age, it's just like there's just so much more room for them to grow just because they have so much more time in the sport. So I think like in the next 5 to 10 years, like marathon world records, ultra marathons are just gonna like progressively just get way more insane. Like I don't think we've even reached the like potential in any of these sports by any means.
So you think like 10 years from now there will be like a handful, like a Mount Rushmore of sub 2 hour marathoners?
Yeah, I believe it. I believe like probably in the next 10 years, it'll almost be, I don't want to say it'll be like the whatever, like the sub 4 minute mile or whatever it is. Like now there's like so many people running sub 4 minute, not so many, but like a good chunk of like people who are running sub 4 minute miles. I think it would be pretty similar to the same where I think there would be at least like, I could see like 5 to 10 people running sub 2 hours in the next 10 years. Like I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility.
But we'll bookmark this. We'll come back to it in the time capsule here in 10 years.
Yeah.
I did miss one question I want to ask you. It's kind of changing gears back to earlier. I've been getting more and more into plyometrics for my own training. And I've always applied them for my athletes, but for me, I'm like, yeah, it would be cool if I could like dunk over my friend Dr. Brandon Tran. I haven't even told him this yet. My goal for the summer is to see if I can get a video of me jumping over him, because I think I'm like 6'3". He's five something. Anyways, plyometrics. I asked James McIntosh last week about applying plyos for bodybuilders. So I've seen a few things about that online, and there's not really much use case for it. Maybe like a little bit, which we talked about. But in terms of like runners, I would imagine for very good runners, there's probably very little use case because you're already getting so much running volume. Like you don't want to probably add more ground contacts in. Maybe like some deep tier stuff from like more of like a preparatory or rehab standpoint. But like for more novice runners, do you think this like giving them some exposure to like some like light to medium tier plyometrics would be beneficial? Like that's honestly, that's like where I start a lot of my people that like want to do more running based stuff. I was like in the weight room with me, like we're going to start doing more plyos, which really is not a plyo if you take the definition of it, but more jumping based things.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a ton of room for it, especially for novice and beginner runners as well, just because there is a lot to say about just like obviously just like tendon strength, tendon capacity as well. Like maybe you don't get as much ROI for someone who's been in the sport for like 5 to 10 years, but definitely for someone just starting out, yeah, for sure, right? Whether it just even be like low level pogos, plyos, even just skipping. I think skipping is like a super underrated low level plyo that not a lot of people even think about. I'll incorporate some of this stuff as well, even with some of my like advanced like level runners as well. Like I'll introduce some plyometric stuff just to kind of keep things a little bit fresh. Also just to keep the, even just like learning new skills in general, just like in the weight room as well. I think there's quite a bit of benefit to that, especially in their off season as well, where we do some like single leg pogos and just like bounding. Stuff like that. But yeah, I think from like a tendon stiffness perspective, low level plyos for sure king when it comes to novice and beginner runners.
Yeah, it's great. I'm happy I'm not just doing that blindly.
No. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
listening to Matt Watson talk about like the reason why he loves doing so much like dynamic nature of or like variety of plyometrics is like thinking about it like neuromuscular mapping. Like you know where your ankle is in space. So whether you're a geriatric boomer trying to walk down the stairs, or whether you're an athlete who like consistently rolls their ankles, like you're just doing more dynamic work and really making yourself aware, like neuromuscular or proprioceptively, like where you are in space while you're doing this activity. So that was an interesting point to me. So that makes sense from what you were saying. Like just keep it fresh, and also like from a motor skill standpoint.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also like when I have my runners or just people in general do like any type of like low level plyometric or just like plyos in general, I like to get them out of their running shoes as well, just because I think there's just some great validity of just having them like not be in their running shoes, just so they have some more better like proprioceptive feedback as well of just like where their ankle is, where their foot is in space, actually in space, not having that separated between like a cushy shoe. And I also love using plyos too for like return to play, especially when runners go like are injured, like trying to introduce some low level plyos again to rebuild some of that tendon stiffness, and even just giving them like we were just talking about like that awareness, right, of like where their foot and ankle is in space.
Yeah, the barefoot thing's great. That's something I do a lot for like football guys, like basketball guys. Like they're so used to being in cleats, being in basketball shoes. Runners are always wearing their fucking 10-inch tall Hokas. So like, yeah, getting them out, getting a little bit of movement to the foot. They're probably not going to get when we're in that kind of closed environment.
Exactly.
Yeah. What's next for you, dude? That's all I have for you. I want to know like what your
Awesome.
next goal is though.
Oh man, my next goal. Well, I did get a little bit of like a bit of like a lower leg like ankle injury, which is kind of shitty. So I've been kind of dealing with that for a little bit. Like the original goal was to go and try to qualify for Boston. Funny enough, this spring. Not that it's like completely off the table, but like training hasn't been super good the past couple weeks. So we'll kind of see. But the goal is to qualify for Boston, hopefully for 2027. So I still have up until September to do it. So we'll kind of see how this May
Wait, how have you
goes.
not how have you not qualified?
Because the time qualification got insanely faster in the past couple
It's
of years.
faster than
It's faster.
2:59 or whatever you ran.
Yeah. So it used to be 3 hours. So for my age group, which is like 18 to 39, the cutoff was like it was 3 hours to qualify. Now the minimum time is 2:55, and even then, so they have like a that's like the minimum time you need to qualify, but it's not the time that you have to run to get accepted, basically. So it's like you could have you can if you run under 2:55, you can put your name in, but depending how many people apply for that year, there's going to be like a cutoff in terms of like the time. So like last year was like 250 something. So basically in my head, I'm like, okay, for me to be safe to qualify for Boston, I have to run under 2 hours and 50 minutes. So that was the original goal in May. But again, I'm not taking things off the table. I'm not going to say that I'm not going to be able to do those things, but I mean, we'll see. But that's still the goal for this year, is to qualify for Boston.
Yeah, that's so insane. It's gotten that fast. Does Bax do your nutrition stuff for you? Does he do your running
Yeah,
stuff too?
yeah, yeah,
Like how
yeah.
much involvement does
No,
he
he
have?
doesn't do my
I need to get
running.
Bax on here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Bax does my nutrition and my strength training as well, and he was like a huge reason and like just like big teaching tool for me in general of just like how I was able like learning just how to manage my volume, my nutrition, and everything like that. And I've taken a lot of like his data driven approach and just applied it to
Yeah.
like myself now and just like my runners. But that was a huge game changing thing for me, and I think that's maybe something that I've heard maybe you talk about or someone talked about where it's like yeah, just like for me, like me investing in a coach finally like is probably something that like I wish I did like like a long time ago, because there's just like so much value in it ultimately.
Yeah, I think me and Jordan were talking about that. Yeah, we I talked about it
Yeah.
somewhere. Yeah, investing in a coach, investing in a mentor, like whatever it is, whatever your goals are. If your goals are more, business based, and honestly, for our profession, like you investing in a coach to coach you is you investing in your business, because you're learning more coaching skills that you're going to apply directly to your own business. But yeah, like if I had any sort of competitive goal, like I would hire somebody. Like I'm not going to do it myself, even if I believe that I could. Even like like my knee's been bugging me for a bit, and it's like purely from doing stupid shit. It's I can almost boil it down to the exact moments that it flares up, and it's when I'm doing like I'm demonstrating like drop jumps off of a 24-inch box with no warm up, like stuff that I shouldn't be doing cold for an athlete. And that's I'm like, oh, my knee felt that. Or I'm doing like hurdle hops or something, and I'm like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. So anyways, I'm like, I kind of like limped around with it for a bit. It wasn't bugging me that bad, but I couldn't train the way I wanted to, and I just didn't invest like the time in fixing it like I should have. Like if it was my own client, and if I was like, fuck it, okay, like I'm gonna treat myself like a client, I'm gonna start digging into it and like resolve pretty quickly. But it's like it's so much harder to be objective with yourself when you have someone else doing it for you. It's like, okay, like tell me what to do, I'm gonna do it. I'm investing in you. Like you have all the control of the reins. So yeah, 100%, that's great, and especially for like a task like a sub 3 hour marathon, like you almost have to have somebody in your corner. You don't have to, but like it certainly is gonna make it a lot easier for you.
Exactly, right. And I always like to use this, I say this too, where I'm like, I just don't feel like I'm talented at all, right? Even in like my like just like even as like an athlete, as a coach, even like I've really had to like just put in a lot of work ultimately. And for me to be able to go like sub 3, like build the kind of business I have, like I feel like I've always just had to go like all in on things. But it's always like you never really know what you don't know. So I felt like I was just like kind of spinning my wheels and not doing the right things and putting my efforts like in the wrong places versus like when you have someone else like kind of having that like someone else take the objective eye and just like being able to be like, hey, like this is what you're doing wrong, like do this, and you're like, oh, okay, I got it.
Yeah, like, literally that's half the reason. That's what I was telling you before we hopped on here. Like half the reason I'm having you on here, other than like I fuck with you heavy, but like I don't know shit about running. Like I know you're like you just ran a sub 3 hour marathon. You train a bunch of runners. Like I would love to have you on. Like one to learn, but also like I'm sure a lot of listeners also run, and like they're probably being dickheads trying to run 4 minute miles right now with no base, eating like shit. Doing all the stuff you still have to do. So, anyways, yeah, it's good to have you on here, man. If people would like to reach out to you, find you, where can they find you at?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at danai.sc. You can slide into the DMs, ask me questions. I always love to chat. Yeah, that's where you can find.
Sweet, appreciate you, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.